Hezekiah, you are on mute.
Hezekiah, can you please unmute?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, for that beautiful opening. For those of you who don't know Tammy, this is Tammy Briggs, and she will be sharing with us in greater depth later, as well as weaving in her beautiful harp music into our time together today. Oh my goodness, look at everyone in this room. Welcome to all of you. We're so very glad you're here. And in addition, we are so honored and delighted to have our beloved Becky Suzik providing tech support for us. Becky, you can wave. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, here we are at CSW67. And our event is Moving the Needle, Equality and Empowerment of Women and Girls. We want you to know that this is an event about consciousness. And maybe we can begin by at least asking the question or questions. How do you define consciousness? And what does peace consciousness mean to you? Just think about that for a moment. And if you feel inspired to put your responses in the chat, of course, we'd love that. So, how do you define consciousness? And what does consciousness mean to you? We'll give you a moment. My name is Hezekiah Gabriel, and I am the Executive Director of Pathways to Peace. Pathways to Peace is a United Nations peace messenger organization in consultative status with ECOSOC and the Department of Global Communications. We've been about the business of peace building for over 40 years. And our beloved Aben Madison, our co-founder, who passed a year ago, was very instrumental in bringing some key initiatives to the UN, some key resolutions, including the International Day of Peace celebrated on September 21st of every year, and the Culture of Peace Declaration and Program of Action. And so we are very deeply rooted in the UN, and we also do our work beyond the UN. So again, thank you for being here. About a year ago, Pathways to Peace completed its strategic plan. And what came out of that strategic plan was a priority around expanding and evolving consciousness. So you can imagine that having consciousness, peace consciousness as our priority, that has brought us into many conversations to address the questions that I put on the table for you. And it's been just an exciting journey. And so today, we are bringing consciousness out of the closet and bringing it into the UN. So thank you for being here to explore these issues with us. In these times, science and old sacred traditions merge to provide emerging knowledge about the role of consciousness. We know that peace consciousness is unity consciousness, it's oneness consciousness, it's consciousness. Science affirms that we are all interconnected and that our planet and even our universe is a large, living, interconnected whole system. And we are a part of that. We know that consciousness lives in the heart and begins within. The sages tell us that if we lead with the heart, the mind will follow. We know that when the heart is in tune with the higher vibrations of consciousness, that positive energy is sent into the field of consciousness. And that positive energy is transformative. We are constantly informing the field of consciousness by what we are sending out from that coherent mind-heart energy. We are feeding that field. In a recent interview with my dear friend, Jennifer Kim of the Peace School in Chicago, she said something that really touched me deeply. And when it came to how are we to respond to the wars on our planet as committed peace builders. And she said, well, we look first within our heart, because if we're warring within our heart, that's what we're putting into the field. And of course, what we know is if we're loving in our heart, that's what we put into the field of consciousness. But it doesn't stop there, does it? Because consciousness prompts intentional action. So today we are going to connect the dots between the technology of consciousness and the empowerment of women and girls. Because we know that if we expand and evolve peace consciousness, which means knowing and embracing our oneness with all that is, that everyone and everything here on planet Earth will thrive. There are so many beautiful organizations striving to bring peace to our planet. Perhaps it's finally time to bring our greatest technology to the field of peace building, and that is peace consciousness. In some ways, talking about consciousness is counterintuitive, as we know that consciousness is experienced. The words that we use to describe consciousness, sometimes it'll be the words that you've used. They include things like energy, frequency, vibration. All are felt experiences. So it's our endeavor to not only provide world-class presenters, and they are, who really embody consciousness, but also to weave into our time together, into our conversation about consciousness, experiences. And you're going to experience a little weaving between our speakers as well. So we invite you to fully open your hearts and minds as we move forward together to explore peace consciousness and the use of that technology to promote equality, equity, and empowerment of women and girls. Thank you. So, Becky, if you want to pull up our speakers, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and you can see them. And so Dr. Anil Anil Maheshwari, thank you for being patient with me with your name. Anil is a professor of management at Maharishi International University in the United States. He lives in Fairfield, Iowa, with his wife and 2 adult children. He has published 16 books and 40 papers and book chapters on consciousness, leadership, creativity, information technology, social entrepreneurship, enlightenment, and more. He has made over 40 presentations at conferences and seminars, including on his most favorite topic of personal and collective development through transcendence. And that's what he will be presenting today. Next, we have our dear beloved Tammy Briggs. After receiving her International Harp Therapy Program certification, Tammy founded Musical Reflections, located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 1999. She has produced 15 CDs for relaxation and written 2 books. Her newest project is fulfilling her dream of using her harp for world peace by founding Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity, which is about harpists around the world who play with love for unity, peace, and planetary healing. Through the vibrations of the harp, the musical intention is to help you connect with your own inner peace so you can radiate it out, bringing peace and calm to the world. And we have Robert Browning and Sheva Carr, our couple who are going to be weaving together their presentation. Robert is a PhD in HC. He is co-director of HeartMath Healthcare and co-vice president of Pathways to Peace. For over 27 years, he has committed his life to educating, serving, and creating a heart-based world. His honorary doctorate is in human caring and caring science. And as a master trainer for HeartMath, he's trained over 25,000 individuals in evidence-based tools to help activate the heart of humanity. Sheva Carr, MA, LAC, RPP, BCPP, RPE, you have a lot of credentials. Sheva is co-director at HeartMath Healthcare, architect and director of HeartMath and Heart Ambassadors and Heart Mastery, the Heart Mastery program. She's CEO of Heart Ambassadors, executive director of the Fiera Foundation, and co-vice president and UN delegate for UN Peace Messenger Organization, Pathways to Peace. That's us. Thank you, both of you. And then we have Dr. Jenna Darko. Jenna Darko, PhD, is a film writer and peace activist. Jenna's aim is to bring to the big screen a new mythos to awaken the human spirit as the foundation for our evolving humanity. She centers both her creative work and sacred activism around the vision of horses to help lead humanity beyond our ways of war and dominance into new ways of walking together in peace, as we remember our true place in the circle of life on this beautiful garden planet. The depth of her compassion comes from over a decade of experience in working with veterans of war, survivors of sexual trauma, and people contemplating suicide before turning her attention to how societies can begin to overcome such suffering. Jenna knows that the human heart is empowered to unwind all our personal and collective wounding, such that we can come to know the meaning of living heaven on earth. And last but not least, David Wick. David has held the vision and values of personal and societal evolution to our highest and best. He currently serves as Pathways to Peace president, Rotary E-Club of World Peace immediate past president, and the Ashland Culture of Peace Commission, where he is the executive director. Beginning in 1980, David helped launch the United Nations NGO, Pathways to Peace, which had assisted the adoption of the UN's International Day of Peace in 1981. While working at Stanford University, in 1985, he founded the 10-year-long program, Pathways to Peace within organizations. Building upon his knowledge and experience, David co-founded the Ashland Culture of Peace Commission. with Irene Kai, his partner, and he currently serves as its executive director. David's previous experiences culminated in his leadership as president of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. So you can see we have an amazing panel of presenters. So welcome to all of you, and we're forever grateful to each of our presenters for being here with us today. We're also very proud to have our co-sponsor for this event being the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And we have one of our favorite Rotarians and a Rotary leader, Rudy Westervelt of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. Rudy, I'm turning it over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tezekiah. You and David for inviting me to join you today and for your leadership in putting this conference together. As Tezekiah mentioned, I am in the Rotary E-Club of World Peace and one of the co-founders of that. We started this club back in 2016. We are one of 35,000 Rotary clubs around the world. Our Rotary was founded in 1905, 118 years ago, and it's everything we do is working on peace, whether it's service in our communities in a variety of different areas. And we are certainly proud to be co-sponsors of this today. 1945, 50 Rotarians were invited up in San Francisco to help write the charter for the United Nations. We have a high status at the UN. We have members of Rotary International who are on every panel, every area of the United Nations, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Health Organization, and so forth there. In fact, UNICEF and World Health Organization are partners with us, as well as CDC, in helping eradicate polio around the planet, and we've almost eliminated that, which has helped us do peacemaking out there. And in those areas, and that's particularly interesting because of today's topic, is mobilizing women to be able to get into Afghanistan and Pakistan and reach other women and their children to immunize these children so we can finally wipe it off the planet. And so from our very core, Rotary is looking and has continued to work on building and empowering women and girls in a variety of ways. Of course, that's not only just in maternal and children's health, but it's also in educational literacy and in each of our areas of focus that we work on. Inequality is forefront for women, and I really love we know that your theme today is an action theme with the word moving. And we do need to have action. We need to continue the action, pushing forward, because we need to be ever mindful that the importance of empowering and having equality with women and girls around the world. We recently know that there's certainly challenges out there in certain countries, and even in the United States, we have our own challenges here. And so we need to work together, keep it out front, and move the process forward. So I welcome you to join us on any Tuesday evening. We meet at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday evening on Zoom every Tuesday evening. And I welcome you to join us. And I'm very proud that we have Tezekiah, Tammy, Sheva, David, Anil. They're members of our Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And so we are a club of peace builders from a variety of organizations. And I appreciate your leadership today. And I look forward to hearing our speakers. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Rudy. So the Rotary E-Club of World Peace is our co-sponsor, our co-host for this event is the Fiera Foundation. And so I'd like to invite Sheva Carr from Fiera. She's actually the founder of the Fiera Foundation, the architect, to start us off in the good way. So Sheva.
Thank you, Tezekiah. And the good news is that this good way isn't good versus bad. You get to bring whatever you're experiencing into this way of heart. I just want to acknowledge that the Fiera Foundation received our EcoSoc consultative status with the guidance of Avon Madison as our role model in Pathways to Peace. So we are truly sister organizations or mother-daughter organizations. And it's one thing, as Tezekiah so beautifully said, to talk about consciousness. But if talk were to change the status of women and girls, we would have seen a lot more changes by now, because we've been talking about it for 67 years at the UN. So what we're going to do now is an experience. And Robert and I will be giving you some science behind this experience later. So if you're willing to play along and have an experience, then we'll learn more about it later on. But right now, I'd like to invite you to focus attention on the area around the heart, the chest area. If you find it helpful, as Tezekiah and I am, you can put your hand on that area, but it's not required. The idea is just to bring your attention down to the chest area. And imagine the breath is flowing in through the heart and out through the heart, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. For the greatest effectiveness of this technique, called heart-focused breathing, it's helpful if the inhale and the exhale are relatively even in length. So if you find it helpful, you can count as you breathe in and count as you breathe out on whatever rhythm works for your body today. And whatever you're noticing inside yourself, around yourself, simply bring it to your heart-focused breath as you breathe in through the heart and out through the heart for the next minute in silence. Thank you for playing. Now I'm just going to ask two quick questions. As you're doing that heart-focused breathing, did you, like me, become more aware of your environment? I heard the rain outside for the first time this afternoon, and I heard the sound of our heater, which I wasn't noticing before. Raise your hand or give us an emoji. Your reactions are on the bottom taskbar in the chat, like a heart or a thumbs up. If you became more aware of your environment, I see some thumbs up, some hands up. Now check in. I actually became aware of my own heartbeat and some tension in my left leg. Raise your hand or give us an emoji if you became more aware of something inside you. Yeah, I'm seeing even more hands. That increased awareness is consciousness. And we have some very compelling research data on the one side and anecdotal data and stories on the other, that simple increase in awareness can increase equality between the genders. And that's where we're going for the rest of our time together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for starting us out at Pathways to Peace. We typically start out with a meditation that is always heart math based. So grateful to have our heart math experts here with us. And Sheva, as always, that was just perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we are going to begin our presentations with Dr. Anil Mahawari. And as he said, his own words in the introduction that I read, his talk is on personal and collective development through transcendence. And so, Anil, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone for joining today at this wonderful event. And my name is Anil Maheshwari. I'm a professor of management and information systems at the Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa. And this is a university that has been the home of consciousness-based education since 1971, so almost 52 years. So we've been holding the banner for consciousness and consciousness development for a very long time. And I will just talk a little bit about out of the work we have done and how it can help improve development for everybody, men, women, children, in this country, that country, everywhere. And then not only that, but create collective coherence to drive world peace. So we'll show some evidence for that. So we start always with the wholeness, that wholeness is blissful. So Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. First line says the world is wholeness. That world is wholeness. This inner world is also wholeness. From wholeness comes wholeness. And when take out wholeness out of wholeness, what remains is also wholeness. So wholeness is a beautiful fractal quality that it sort of doesn't go away, and wholeness can be very blissful and satisfying. What I will talk very briefly today would be just touch on the grand challenges, right? Social inequality in particular, but climate change is a big one. But I'll start trying to answer this with this idea of asking a question of who am I? That has a big bearing on how we see the world and how we bring peace to the world. And so I would say I'm neither this nor that. There is no me. I'm pure consciousness. That is what I will suggest. And that this pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure existence can be experienced through transcendence. And I will describe that. And then towards the end, I will use a slide or two to describe how the technologies of development of consciousness and meditation can be used to create well-being and bring peace to the world. Okay, so quickly, grand challenges. We all know what's going on in the world. There are wars, climate change, social inequality, and these are what is called wicked, complex global problems. Albert Einstein said they cannot be solved from the same level from which they arose. Same level of consciousness, actually used the word. And a management professor from Canada spoke at a conference, which I liked. He says, tackling grand challenges is like falling sick at the intersection of specialties. Patient gets kicked around to no avail, which means that it isn't a peace. World peace is not a problem for any one function or any group or any department to solve. It starts on this idea. Key problem is pragya prat, means the fault of the mistake, or fault of the intellect, mistake of the intellect, that we identify the self with some external reality or material object. Whereas the key element is the self is us, with this, which is the fineness of vibration or pure awareness. The key solution is self-referral, transcendence, and then connecting with that pure consciousness, which allows us to solve the problems for ourselves and for the world. Briefly, the stress of alienation for men, women, everybody has increased. Information age has transformed human mind. There is too much information, social media, you can add to it, but that produces lots of opportunities, lots of threats, moving very fast, producing lots of risk, uncertainty. We had pandemic too. So all the acceleration of life produces a lot of emotional and social stress. And this pervasive stress impacts health and happiness and peace. People can't take time off for relating with their higher self, finding higher purpose, finding joy in their life. So question becomes again, what are we? Are we that divine energy? Are we this body-mind instrument, or both, or not? So let me ask this question point blank. Who am I? Ramana Maharshi from India in the, but 150, 70 years ago, he asked this question. He said, there's one reason, one way to get happiness is just keep asking, who am I? But the answer to this question is not that there is some specific answer. The purpose of this question is to dissolve the questioner. The one who's asking this question slowly dissolves. What's left is that pure I-ness. Another Rishi said there are two laws of nature. Everyone comes to this world with an open return ticket. Till then, it is pain, pleasure, happiness, and ecstasy. So that says that we are temporary. We should use every moment of life in any very aware with awareness, with consciousness and intentionality, and doing the right things. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of our university, focused on the happiness part here. He said the purpose of life is to expand happiness, expansion of happiness. Not my happiness, not somebody else's happiness, but just overall happiness. Let's create the big bank of happiness. And the way to answer these questions that I was talking, the big questions, looking outside, we say, why, to get to the root cause of why there's climate change, why is this inequality? But inside, when we look at who am I, we say, Neti means na means no, iti means this, neti. To experience ultimate reality of that oneness, that unbounded vibration of pure awareness, we just ask not this, not. So let go of everything, and then what's left is really what I am. Let me present a more scientific or electrical. I'm an electrical engineer, so let me present an electrical an example. Who am I in this picture? Am I the bulb that is producing the light, or am I the light that's being produced and helping? Am I the electricity that is being, producing the light, or am I the wires and the magnets that's producing the electricity and transmitting it? Or am I the laws of electromagnetism that is driving the whole phenomenon? Or am I actually the whole laws of nature beyond electromagnetism, laws of physics, laws of society, laws of everything, man-made laws, total laws of nature? What is the answer? Probably all of it, right? At various levels. So the level that we identify with the physicality or sort of instrumentality or just pure awareness, the pure laws of nature, that determines how we exist in the world. That determines the totality of our canvas, shall we say. We are oneness. We are oneness of all levels and across all people. Look at these houses, right? They look so nice, pretty different colors, different sizes. At the surface level, they appear separate, but beneath the surface, they're all connected, right? They all need the same services. They need to throw out the same garbage. They need to get the same water, electricity, internet connection, phone lines, all of that. So those are all connected. Truth is one. It's expressed in many ways. So it's just oneness being expressed in various physical entities. That's the idea of oneness. I can just describe an experience I had of oneness or being sort of distributed or released from my own bodily existence or sort of any notion of that I'm this body. So I attended the program where this many pundits, about 1,331 pundits were performing this program called Ati Rudra Abhishekam, which is a chant. And so large mass of Vedic pundits who began to chant low and slow. And it was a very deep and so deeply sonorous and resonant sound. So it begins to resonate with the body because that's the nature of the sound that they produce. In just a couple of minutes, sort of my head grew heavy and, my eyes naturally closed. I sort of went in some place. I was neither awake nor sleepy and began to have amazing experiences. And one of the most vivid experience for me even now is this: I felt like a crane pulled me out of the well of a building and put me on the side. And so the building was what was put on the side was pure vibration, as if a break of pure vibration, invisible but very vibrant. So I was not the building from which I was taken out. I felt liberated from the confines of my physical body. That's a moksha. Moksha means like liberation moment. That's kind of one of the main goals of life in the Vedic way of thinking. So that was my own personal experience, and that changed life a lot. This happened about 7 years ago for me. So that was the, like say, some bit of theory of discussion of levels of existence or self-identification. What is transcendence? Transcend is not to ascend or descend, just go beyond. If you look at the right side, we are pure consciousness, or we are human beings. At one level, we are individual human beings, like the houses I showed, or like we have a certain body, a gender, woman, man, etc. But then at some level, we have pure awareness that manifests itself through all of us and each of us. So transcendence is the act of withdrawing attention from particularities and then bringing it to totality of our total existence. And technologies of transcendence can be used, means utilized, to create laser-like coherence and the collective consciousness for sustainable world peace and prosperity. And I will show some data on that. That means that if the technology of consciousness is utilized by a large enough number of people, then that technology can create a certain amount of coherence that can travel in the social fabric or in the fabric of consciousness. So how do we transcend? So this is my V theory that I kind of invented based on Maharshi's knowledge. V, you can say V for Vedas, V for victory, V for we as one, and it's also beyond U theory for MIT, which was produced, which inspired me to make a V theory. So think of it, we live in a surface reality. Things go up, things go down. We are like waves in the ocean, and we experience ups and downs. If we have a technique or technology to transcend that and transcend to the absolute from the relative, that's what we call it inward stroke. That's pure consciousness. It's, beautiful, all the laws of nature, pure unified field. You can call it pure awareness, pure consciousness. We stay there, and as we get there, sort of our thoughts become finer and finer and finer till we don't have thoughts. We don't have thoughts. Thoughts just vanish. We stay there, we sort of float in the bliss of pure consciousness, and then at some point in time, we just come back out, and we come back to the surface reality. In the process, we may come back a little bit forward, a little bit farther, a little bit more creative, a little bit more rested, more energized. So that helps. Once you do that often, you just feel the bliss more, and you bring more bliss from the total unbounded consciousness to your life. That's a simple V theory model. And any technique you have can be utilized so long as you understand there's a surface reality and there's an unbounded non-dual reality, which is the source of all the surface reality. That state of consciousness, the bottom, is called the fourth state of consciousness that was identified in the Vedas and has been proven by science. In the Vedas, it says, Shivam Shantam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Sa Vigyeya. Shivam is Shantam, and it's Chaturtha means its fourth state, and Sa Atma means that's Atma or the soul. Sa Vigyeya, that's what knowing. When you hear know thyself, that is what you need to know. The silence within, not know the body, that we know well enough, hopefully. So that's the translation. The Shiva is pure silence. It's a non-dual transcendental state. That is the Atma or the self or the soul or whatever you call it. And it's worth knowing. That is the holy grail. And this state can be achieved through dhyana and samadhi. Those of you know Yoga Sutras. It has 8-fold path. And the subtlest of them are dhyana means meditation, loosely translated. Samadhi means a state of oneness, equanimity. Those are subtlest limbs of the yoga. And there is really no Western equivalent for dhyana and thing, because a lot of the Western way of scientific thinking is directed towards sense organs and what we can perceive through senses. This is to go inward. Now, let me share with you what happens when you go inward. Let's say we look at this conscious states of consciousness, and let me show you the first 3 ordinary states of consciousness. The normal state of consciousness is sleep, dream, and waking state. In sleep state, we are not aware of ourselves, and we are not aware of the contents of our experience. We don't know what's going on. In dream state, we are not aware of ourselves, but we are aware of some things going on, residues of what we may have experienced through our senses. In the waking state, like now, we are aware of our limited experience as an ego body, or the person standing with here. And then, but we're also aware of what we perceive, what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're all that. The fourth state of consciousness is opposite of, let's say, the dream state. We're aware only of ourselves and not of any thoughts. This is pure existence, unalloyed, unsullied by any experience of the sense organs. And that is blissful, naturally is blissful, it's naturally peaceful, Sat Chitanand. That's pure consciousness, that's pure bliss. As you begin to transcend more often, you reach higher states of consciousness. By the way, these 7 states of consciousness were identified by Maharshi to show how you can proceed further beyond just the 4th state of consciousness, which I described in the previous slide. And you reach higher state of consciousness called cosmic consciousness. Your unbounded consciousness or awareness is accessible even in the waking state. So even I'm looking at you, I have the sort of awareness of the totality in my own awareness. And as we go further, that awareness becomes finer, and what you see on the outside, you begin to see very finely as very closely related to who you are. And ultimately, this idea of unity consciousness is that where everything is one, you and that is all the same, you become Brahman. It's called Brahman consciousness. You're the creator, and everything outside actually is nothing but fluctuation within your own consciousness. That is the kind of ultimate state of awareness where you become pure awareness, everything being one all the time, and then life is completely bliss. So now, why do you meditate? So that was the states of consciousness. Why do you meditate? Let's say meditation is very important as we grow older. So what are the major phases of growth? Let's say Piagetian perspective. When you early childhood, right up to 3-4 years of age, sensory inputs like this, the red ball, bat, all that stuff you can see. As you grow a little bit older, then you begin to see them symbolic. And this is a bag, this is a bat, this is a ball, this is a chair, and they can have in different colors. Symbolically, you can understand what are things. As you grow the younger adult, let's say up to about 25 years of age, your language drives, the cognitive skills drives your growth and development. You learn more, you do education, degrees, and this and that, and your knowledge increases. But beyond 25 age, let's say, when your mind is pretty much set and growing in a particular way, the only thing that will cause further development is going inward, transcending. And for transcending, you need to meditate. Meditate and go back to the source of thought, not just getting more thoughts. And that can lead to lots of benefits. Now, what is meditation? Meditation is generally a way of transcending sensory surface to reach higher states of consciousness, very much like what I described as the V theory. So going from the surface reality to the higher states of consciousness. Broadly, I'm told, or somebody described beautifully, 2 different types of meditations based on which traditions they're coming from. Underlying reality is that there's nothingness, like in Buddhism, Shunya and Zen, or the one type means that everything is one-bounded, non-dual one. So total consciousness, pure consciousness, what you're talking about. So that's more Vedic tradition, and others could be. But these description of transcendental states of higher consciousness have been found in the writings of everywhere. Every spiritual leader, every leader, again, begins to document. British poets write a lot of poetry. That's why it persists for so long, because it speaks to the heart, speaks to the higher self. Sufi mystics, even modern scientists like Robert Oppenheimer or Einstein, they've been quoting from Vedas, religious figures, Vedic seers, all those people. One of the techniques that our founder promoted and showed how the world can transcend is called transcendental meditation. Many of you might have heard of it, about 7 million people in the world, or 10 million now the number, practice it. It's an ancient technique for effortless transcending. It's kind of done very effortlessly. Practice 20 minutes a day, morning and evening, or whatever you want to do. Anyone can practice. It's a sound-based thing. Sound has no meaning. So there's no sort of no religious component or anything of that kind. You're initiated by an expert, what we call a TM teacher. If you want to know where to get a TM teacher, you can go to tm.org. So you're given a sound that helps you go away from the sensory reality and into the deeper self of the self. And there's a quote from Paul McCartney that TM gives me an island of calm in the midst of so much turbulence. That's a technique. Even with 20 minutes, you can produce a lot more productive time because you bring that stillness to yourself. Now, let me share just briefly the benefits. The biggest benefit, I think the earliest benefit that people in the US wanted was stress management, because there's so much stress and we still have so much stress. Now, this is a Stanford study from about couple of decades ago that showed that when you look at the reduction in stress, you try concentration technique, contemplation techniques, other techniques. Compared to that, TM produced very significantly higher reduction in stress management. And you see the quote from Dr. Norman Rosenthal, that no other stress management technique has anywhere close to this amount of hard data, research data in support of its claims. But that's just one of the things. But there are benefits of the physiological, psychological, neurological, and many levels. So psychologically, as I said, reduce stress, reduce anxiety, inner peace, because you connect with your overall peace within all the time, which means you have greater awareness. The more awareness you bring, it has great benefits. You feel enlightened. If you can feel one with everything and release from the body, then that itself is a great benefit. Physiological, cardiovascular benefits. We've had about $20 billion worth of NIH funding into showing the benefit of TM on cardiovascular health and heart rate, blood pressure, all those come down. There's brain integration, neurological benefits doing EEG results, and overall better health in terms of glowing skin conductance, etc. But for the perspective and here, what we're talking about, what are the benefits at the group level? How can we impact the status of women collectively or the world collectively? So there's a phenomenon called superradiance effect, which is that when N people meditate together, the effect is of N squared people meditating together. If you go from an engineering perspective, if each one is a vibration, the vibration adds up, the amplitude adds up. Power is defined as amplitude. So as you can see, as 100 people meditate together, you have the benefit of 10,000 people together. If you have the benefit of 2,000 people together, that creates enough power to create coherence for all the population of the United States. And if you did a slightly larger number, you do for the whole world. So that is what is needed to create a group of, let's say, square root of 1% of the world's population meditating using advanced techniques can create coherence in the world. And I'll show you evidence in a moment. We predicted and lowered rates of violence in Israel, Lebanon, Washington, D.C., and the world actually recently. And I'll show again evidence. Thousands are continuing to meditate, help bring the peace. Like everybody is not a soldier on the boundaries to protect the country. Similarly, not everybody has to meditate to create peace in the world. Of course, everybody should create peace for themselves, but groups of meditators can create enough coherence for the rest of the world. It also brings benefits for business. You are able to think transformative ideas much more because you are expanded. Awareness brings more dots to be connected automatically, which leads to more creativity. I was talking to somebody from Harvard, and she was presenting at a conference that creativity is about making new connections. And after her talk, I went and said, can I just disagree on one thing, which is that I agree with everything you said. Maybe it's not about making more connections, but discovering more connections. The connections are already there in all these things. Just the domain of thinking is limited. We don't think of connections across boundaries. So as the boundaries go away, then our creativity becomes automatically higher. We become holistic in our thinking. Response time becomes better, happier staff, better relationships. And research has shown when the meditators, their healthcare requirements go down. This is what I would refer to as almost my last chart, to show the effects when a sufficiently large group of meditators meditate together. So this was about 2,000 people meditating together in Fairfield, Iowa, in our meditation domes. What you see, the blue lines in each chart is when this number was reached. Now, this is the data of crime data for last 4 years prior to that. And you said this is the homicide rate. This chart is for each is different metric. These are metrics from federal, FBI and sort of federal metrics. We didn't make up the numbers. But look at the previous 4 years prior to this number being achieved in 2007. This was the regular kind of graph, month by month, like this going on. As soon as that number was reached, the crime rate, the curve began to go down. Average numbers began to go down. Same thing with violence rate. The same thing can be with vehicle fatality rate. Other accidents, drug-related deaths. Look at this graph was going up at a certain degree and then became sort of less growing. Or infant mortality rate was going down a little bit, but instantly started dropping. And these are if you count all the things together, they're like P is less than 1 to 10 to the minus 12. That means less than 1 in a trillion chance of this happening by chance. So that is the idea. So the technologies exist, and we can use this technologies of consciousness to create one world, the future being, the world being our family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Thank you all for listening, and have a peaceful, blissful day and evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. And thank you for providing that macro kind of framework for us. Thank you. Thank you. Next, I'm honored and delighted to bring our beloved Tammy Briggs back. And she is going to, the title or topic for Tammy is Grace Notes of Peace. So Tammy, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tezekiah. And Anil, thank you. My goodness, you covered a lot of territory in your 15 minutes. So what I want to weave together from your presentation into mine is what I found most fascinating is you gave us the benefits of meditation and you have the research data to back it up. And I really think the harp is one of the most meditative instruments there is, and so I want to give you a little bit of the experience of that right now. So when the harp is played from a peaceful place of intention, it's a way for us to anchor to our hearts, as Sheva so beautifully launched us into our hearts earlier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a song, and we're going to anchor you to a peaceful experience, hopefully. And to do this, I would invite you to give yourself a hug. And as you give yourself a hug, take a breath into your heart space. And as I play, then hold your hug and let the music touch you wherever you need to be touched. And then we'll come back together when I'm finished. And now you can release your hug as we come back together. And I would invite you to notice how you're feeling. How are you feeling? And if you want to put some feeling words in the chat, or if you want to write some words down, if you have a journal next to you. When I was out on the speaking circuit before COVID hit, I would ask groups this same question, and many times I would hear peaceful, comforted, loved. Somebody just put love as I said that, calm. And what we just did is we anchored you to however you feel now. And an example of anchoring, so if you get a massage and you have a CD that's playing at the massage, and you leave that experience of the massage just like jelly. You're so relaxed and your whole body is just fluid. The next day, if you play that same CD, you can actually bring the same feeling of the massage back into your body because you anchored the bodily memory to the music. And the reason I had you give yourself a hug is if you feel stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, I've heard so many people say right now we're all just overwhelmed. If you just give yourself a hug, take a breath into your heart, you will literally pull back the same feeling that you just experienced. And I saw some words in the chat, sweet and joy, peace. So those are words that you can anchor to. And that is what I experienced a lot when I was playing in the hospital setting. So before COVID, I played the harp at the hospital and hospice bedside. And in that experience, I would normally play between 10 and 20 minutes, depending on how much time the patient and the staff had for me to play for them. And I would play in the small, intimate space of a hospital room. And after I would finish, I would hear patients say to me two things. I feel so relaxed, and I didn't know how stressed I was. And what I have realized is that when patients would say that to me, that was a bit of their own self-awareness. And that self-awareness is what we're talking about with consciousness. Consciousness is really about our own self-awareness and how we're projecting that out. And then the other thing that I think also happened in that interaction, and sometimes it was very brief at the very end of these experiences, but I saw patients many times giving themselves permission to also do self-care. And when we give ourselves permission to self-care, we're not being selfish. It's really about paying attention to, again, that self-awareness piece and what we need for our own journeys. I want to talk just a couple minutes about some paradoxes, and in particular using the harp as a metaphor with paradox. So the harp is one of the most vibrational instruments, and it's because this harp has 47 strings and they're all open. So the open strings of the harp vibrate and resonate, and then that's what we experience even on Zoom. I think you probably experienced it. It's better in person, of course, but we can still feel this on Zoom. And in those vibrations, the paradox is that it's incredibly gentle. It's very gentle on our hearts, but it's also really powerful. And Rudy did a beautiful job explaining what the Rotary International E-Club of World Peace does. And one of the things that our club hosts every month is a peace meditation. And these peace meditations are gathering in community in silence for an hour, and then I play intermittently throughout that hour to help us hold our focus and keep our vibration up. And we just had one on Monday night. Our next one will be April 3rd, and they're at 7 to 8 Central Time. And it's a wonderful way to experience the harp as extremely gentle, but also really powerful, because when we're in community together, magic happens. It's really amazing what has happened from these meditations. The other paradox that I want to just mention really briefly is the paradox of tension and release. And as I mentioned, this harp is 47 strings, and the amount of tension that these 47 strings hold is about 2,000 pounds. And I know that because this harp is a very, very special story about this harp, which I won't go into. But when this harp arrived, it was actually my childhood piano teacher's, and when she shipped it to me, it arrived in a massive ice storm in Minneapolis from Colorado. And this elbow joint up here arrived with a crack that was about like that and went up to a hairline. And that joint of the harp holds all of the tension. It holds the tension of all the strings coming this way and all the strings coming up from the soundboard. So I had to take this harp to downtown Chicago to get it repaired. And what they did is they replaced this elbow joint. But the first thing they did is they said, oh, we have got to undo all the strings to release that tension. So I'm going to play the beautiful song Dona Nobis Pacem, which means let there be peace. And as I play this song, I would invite you to think about the paradox of tension and release. What are you holding tension of, and how can you release? And this is, I believe, part of what our earthly journeys are right now with consciousness, is about, yes, we've got tension, but collectively we can release it, and that's a very powerful experience. Dona Nobis Pacem. I have one more thing that I want to talk about the harp. The harp is best known for the glissando. And you can do that on the piano. It hurts your thumb when you do it, and it's not nearly as pretty, I don't think, as it is when it's on the harp. And I want to share something that happened at the bedside, but I think it's relevant to our times today. So when I was playing the harp at the hospital bedside, I was frequently playing in connection with a healing touch practitioner. And she would do a technique called magnetic clearing. It's where you rub your hands together, you get them nice and warm, and then you treat your fingers as little magnets, and then she would rake her fingers over the patient's energy field, pulling off any energy that's not serving the patient. And I would play the harp while she was doing various techniques. And one day she was doing that, and I noticed her hands got really lumpy, glumpy, and just intuitively, I started doing glissandos. And we had lunch after we finished working together, and we were talking about that. And she said, you know, when you started doing those glissandos, the whole energy field just felt like glass and everything just whooshed away. So we realized that those glissandos serve a very specific purpose. And what I have realized that my harp sits kind of in the middle of my home. And many times when I'm walking by, I'll just do a glissando and I am clearing energy for the collective. And some days, if the energy feels really heavy, I'm doing a lot of glissandos. And it's really about just clearing. So I just want to say that you know that there's a harpist in Minneapolis that's doing glissandos almost every day to help clear out the energy. So, Tez, how are we doing on time? Do I have time to play one more song or just, okay, well, we'll do one more song. The song that I'm going to play is called Peace Blessing. And this is a song that is dedicated to our beloved Avon Madison, who is one of the founders of Pathways to Peace, along with David and Joni, who's also, I think, on this call tonight. So this is Peace Blessing. And I will close with a writing that comes from Charlie Riverman. And he's in a group called the Global Heart Team. And some of you may have noticed Grace, I think, is on this Zoom tonight, and she's got hearts all around her picture. And he wrote a poem last week in our group called Harmony Within Our Hearts, and it's short, and I'll close with these words. And this is a good segue to Sheva and Robert's section next. If we think our life as a melody, it is our heart that is the orchestra, whose rhythmic pulsing reminds us that the beating and flowing within creates the magical and rhythmic melody, filling us with a thriving and balanced energy, which, when experienced together with others, we are in heart resonance.
Thank you so much, Tammy, for bringing us back and anchoring us in that beautiful heart and harp energy. So now I'd like to bring forward Robert Browning and Sheva Carr, our couple. And they are going to be speaking on the higher vibrational aspects of both masculine and feminine energies, uniting to help move the needle on gender equality for women and girls. Robert and Sheva.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you to Anil and Tammy. So inspired by both of you. Tammy, as you're playing your heartstrings, I become aware of superstring theory and astrophysics, and it made me want to grab some of our Global Coherence Initiative research, actually. So we were adding some things here for you if we can get to them at the last minute. We're going to go ahead and share our screen for a moment here. And when Tezekiah gave this presentation, Moving the Needle, this is here, the needles in my old profession that I'm used to working with. That's an acupuncture needle. So I'm quite accustomed to using needles to make change in bodies, but now we're going to talk about moving a global needle, but the principles are actually very similar. And so when I found this yin yang symbol of the head and heart, it felt appropriate. And really, we're using the principles of acupuncture here to invite you as the audience into a bit of a thought experiment with us for the next 30 minutes, if you're willing. And that is to, in the West, we think of gender as anatomically defined. And that's creating a social crisis for us in a way, as now Facebook, the last time I checked, and I think it's more now than it was then, has 88 different gender identity options, which has caused quite a conundrum for us at the United Nations, at the Commission on the Status of a Single Gender, Women and Girl Children. But if we go way back to ancient Chinese medicine, gender was less an anatomical concept and more an energy concept of yin and yang. And those energy concepts were available to genders of all anatomical construction. So if you're willing to time travel with us to ancient China for a moment and just play along with the idea of gender as an energy rather than an anatomy, then we'll learn something with modern science combined about the head and the heart as to how we might significantly move the dial on gender equity. And, the data is what the data is. 1 in 3 women or girl children will experience extreme violence in their lifetime because of their anatomy. How do we change that with this consciousness? That's what we're here to really move the outcomes on. So what we'd like to do for a moment is engage you in some contact sports, a group participation. Is the word toxic masculinity familiar to everyone here? I'm seeing some nods. So often that violence against women and girl children is attributed to the energies of toxic masculinity. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to put in the chat, what are some of those attributes of toxic masculinity, the qualities or feelings that go with it? Are you willing to put those in the chat for us? I see some people writing. Overpowering, yes. So we might call that domination, power over. So that's coming in 3 times here. love of power. What else? What kind of power implementation? Aggression, yes, Kim, aggression, competition, domination, or domineering is what we're going to call power over. And anger, violence, says Joni. So what we're going to do here, egoism, we're going to share the whiteboard for just a moment. And we're going to begin to create a map of these qualities. And by the way, can we just acknowledge the presence of men on this panel? Gender identified men, Robert and Neil, David. So important. Gender equity means equity. It means all genders have to be involved in the creation of that. And one of the things that drives toxic masculinity is the separation of yin and yang. When yin and yang are separated, they both distort. They need each other, which is why Robert and I are co-presenting. So we're going to capture some of the words you gave us. In this grid together. So we have actually, I'm going to play a game with you first. I appreciate your willingness to play our little question and answer here, because you're going to tell me where these qualities go on this grid. So if you had to pick which one of these lines, the red on the left or the green on the right, would represent anger, domination, aggression, the qualities that you put for toxic masculinity. Entitlement, that's a great one, Karen. Red, left side. Does everyone agree? Give us a thumbs up if that's where you want those qualities to go. Okay. And what might be the antidotes to these qualities? Any ideas that you want to put in the chat? What's an antidote to domination or domineering? Love, says Barbara. I believe a tree just fell down outside our window. We're in the middle of our 7th atmospheric river from the sky here. So the yin of the water element is pouring into this session while we're with you. Deep breathing, love, consciousness, says Karen. Extraction, consumption, force, control. Thank you, Jenna. Aggression, competition. I'm going to put that here. And so love, calm, partnership, acceptance, collaboration, caring, nurturing, surrender. Would you place these energies on the right side or the left side? The green or the red? Green, says Barbara. And Kim and Grace. Does everybody agree? Shall we go for green? Robert, if you read some of these qualities, I'll type them on the proper side according to the instructions of our group.
And we have love.
All right, let me get over there. Yeah.
And a softening.
Uh-huh.
And a caring and nurturing. Deep listening, collaboration.
I'm going to put those in a special box. Uh-huh.
And we have calm, partnership, and acceptance. And understanding.
Ah, understanding goes in the special box.
And compassion.
Uh-huh. Beautiful. Thank you. Now, let me ask a question. Are any of these qualities from the left side or the right side unique to anatomy? Or do all beings with all different types of anatomy all experience these same qualities? We do, don't we? They've gotten attributed to anatomical expression, but they're really human expression. And does anybody know what the lines, the red and the green lines represent? Besides Tezekiah,
Yes.
who's a trainer in this material, so she doesn't get to say. Our hearts, Barbara, yes. They're actually a picture of heart rhythms. So in fact, our toxic masculinity is made of the same stuff as the antidote. Heart rhythms, hormones, neurotransmitters, autonomic nervous system interactions. We're not going to today go into all the elements that go in to make that up, but it's enough to see that it's a change in heart rhythm that changes all over 1,400 other things, both in our physiology and our environment. And if we get to it, if we have time, we'll share a little of the science of how it impacts the environment. Yes, we've even met with environmental agencies inside the UN about how this change in heart rhythm changes environmental disasters and environmental pollution and climate issues. But we're here right now to look at the impact on women and girl children and their equality. SDG 5. So Shanali, thank you for putting heartbeat. It's not actually heartbeats. That would be EKG. Coming from Tammy's beautiful music, and EKG is like each beat of the music, a note in the song. The heart rhythm is the rhythm of the whole song. And it turns out, and this was a piece of research published in the American Journal of Cardiology in 1995, that put HeartMath on the map, published in the American Journal of Cardiology, that emotions and heart rhythms are reflexive. What we feel affects our heart rhythms, and what our heart rhythms are doing affects how we feel. By definition, this chaotic heart rhythm is a disempowered heart, which is why it's struggling for domination and power over. A coherent heart rhythm is an empowered heart and brings shared authority in collaboration because it changes the way the brain works. It opens up collaborative verbal communication centers of the brain that are able to listen and understand. That's why these go in a special box, because that has to do with how a change of heart changes the brain, which is going to bring us back to our slides in a moment. However, there's a quadrant here in our grid that we haven't filled out. Does anyone know what goes in the lower left quadrant? Because the upper left quadrant is really the equivalent of what we called toxic masculinity, but now we know it's toxic yang, that is something we all have. What goes down here? How about, do we have anything coming in the chat?
Change of heart changes our brain.
Yes, Barbara Mueller, indeed, a change of heart changes our brain. Yes, Grace. You said passivity. It's a little more charged than that. I would call it apathy, depression. To the domineering archetype, it is the victim archetype. If our prey physiology, or I'm sorry, our predator physiology, which is often toxic masculinity is ascribed to predation, is in the upper left quadrant, the prey physiology is the lower left. This is basic survival physiology. Prey predator survival mode is what the incoherent heart rhythm produces in 1,400 things in our physiology. It is puzzle pieces of the same paradigm, gridlocked. Men are not to blame for survival physiology. It's just not that way. We all run this old operating system, whether we play the prey or the predator, and both anatomies can play either one. But we can all download and upgrade to this system through heart empowerment, or what I affectionately call, yes, Joni, toxic yin. I love it. We're coining new phrases here. That's absolutely so. This is toxic yin. Now, not bad, just outdated. The software programs in our physiology that allowed us to survive prairies and plains and run not planes like airplanes, but planes where we were running away from tigers or other predators, don't help us when we're here to solve sustainable development issues or those big, hairy, tricky, global, complex situations that Anil spoke about in the beginning. We need a new consciousness for that. And it turns out we can access that consciousness through the activation of the heart's intelligence. Is there any more that you want to add to that, Robert, as we shift back to our PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'd love just to add one thing. On the grid that you were just seeing, one of the gifts of what we're seeing on the planet right now with these collective human stressors, natural phenomenon, COVID, different things that affect across all genders, all everything, the pressure of the stress that is doing to how we are relating to these global dynamics, war, all sorts of things. The only way out, the freedom from within, we're talking this whole thing is much about consciousness and vibrational rates, but the only way to release that pressure is to ultimately go to the heart. It's to ultimately find a way inside of ourselves to navigate through the pressure of the stress to create a release. So the beautiful part about this, although it can seem chaotic, it seems like the world is falling apart, the shifting dynamics on the planet is actually an ally to this ultimate resolve of gender equality. Because all humans, as Sheva was just saying, all humans are victims in ourselves to this prey-predator physiology. But as we get so insular in our own stress and we finally have the meaningful desire to find a way out, that it's from that desire that then suddenly the intelligence of every single person on this heart, no matter what their package is, has a heart, has a larger intelligence that's trying to communicate with them. It has an opportunity to slide in, to meaningfully connect like that phone cable between us and our larger selves to what is our next step for evolution? What is our next step to bring in more of that inner freedom, which connects to and starts to pivot towards in a transformational way, because coherence, and we'll see the science of this, the integrity of coherence is stronger than the chaos. It has a transformational effect where it can help bring any person, whatever package we have, into the more dignified, respectful, humanistic potential we have as human.
So just coming back briefly to amplify what Robert is saying, gender equity happens inside each of us in our own physiology before it happens as a reflection in global policy and turning the needle on violence. It happens here in the heart rhythm. To Tammy's point, it's a dynamic representation of the equality of tension and release, of the sympathetic nervous system, which is yang, speeding the heart up, and the parasympathetic system slowing the heart down in harmonious marriage. That's what gender equity looks like physiologically. And in that balanced internal state of yin and yang collaborating as a harmonious married couple within each one of us, then what happens is that we get this remarkable change, not only in our physiology, but at the global level. So this is what the shift in heart rhythms looks like. And this is a single trace. We're going to make this shift together in a moment. Robert's going to talk us through the tool that in a heartbeat allows us to shift from our domineering or victimized nervous system to our gender equal nervous system, thriving inside as a representation or ambassador of that in the world, which travels up the vagus nerve and along 3 other communication pathways to the brain, opening up solution-seeking centers of the brain to make us authentically more effective advocates for gender equity at the policy level. And what that does is it's changing this grid. This is the grid we just drew. Our hormones, our nervous system, to bring us into greater capability. So Robert's going to take us there, and then we're going to close by showing you the global impact.
So this is a simple 2-step exercise that
And they've already done the first step.
and you've already done the first step that incorporates very simple but heart-focused breathing. But then you layer and infuse into that some sort of renewing or regenerative or positive feeling or emotion or attitude. So I want everyone right now to simply reflect on your current life. And is there something in your life right now that comes easy to you that you can appreciate, or easy to you to feel care for, or genuine compassion for, or love? And it could be a friend or a pet or a loved one or a special place in nature that you just feel connected to something larger to yourself. But the key part of this technique, not only do we get our physiology to support the shift, but it's infusing a genuine feeling of this, like really experiencing it just for a moment. And the gift of that, the meaningful recalling of that emotion, it helps stabilize that coherence shift. It helps actually move us from that left side of the grid to the right. So let's go through the technique together, and we'll just debrief it briefly. But I want everyone to simply focus your attention in the area of the heart. And imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Just find a rhythm that's comfortable for you. And as you continue to breathe through the area around the heart, now just make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care or love or compassion for someone or something in your life. And just breathe that through the heart area. And as you continue to breathe that quality through the heart area, to simply put in the chat, what is a word that describes the essence of what you're experiencing right now? mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically, whatever describes the essence of what you're experiencing right now. And continue to breathe that as you just read what comes in through the chat. We're seeing warmth and peace and expansion and love and more love, and just appreciate what people are writing and continue to breathe, being aware of your heart, being aware of the rhythmic patterns of your heart, but also the quality that you're breathing through it, feeling peacefulness, more awareness, and more love from Gerald. It's humbling. As you see these qualities come in, back to what Sheva was sharing, these are very human qualities that can be experienced at any point in whatever identity we have, with whatever gender we have, or whatever issue we have, more inner joy. Ultimately, as the heart takes control of steering our inner ship, the choices, the perceptions, the attitudes of how we treat one another, the basic kindness and respect and dignity that we all crave, that would ultimately be the resolve of gender equality. It would ultimately drive at different meetings and different tables a basic balancing of energetics, because we are all human at heart. So we need to embrace these times. Barbara says acceptance, of course, more calm. Embrace these times, as Tammy was talking about, almost like a creative tension and pressure. There's gifts in that pressure because it drives us deeper to the heart, and it ultimately will resolve some of these discords that we are experiencing on this planet.
And we have some significant data that shows that it does that. And we're just going to show you like 2 minutes worth of 35 years and over 250 peer-reviewed papers. Do you want to speak to these quickly, Robert?
Yeah, so this is a blend of all sorts of body parts. But when people are breathing through the heart, what you see are these shifts in over 43% of 11,000 people were saying, I'm tired, often to always, I have no more energy to be nice to anybody. But then that dropping to 24% just in a few weeks of practicing these skills. Exhaustion coming down, depression coming down, anxiety, all these taxing qualities that just
60% less anger, which we defined together as a group just now as toxic masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely. And how that energy savings gets reallocated, where we're sleeping better. People were sleeping, half were sleeping way better, getting the rest they needed, processing the food in particular ways where their digestion was feeling nourished and complete. I mean, all these things that have us check out and no longer want to care for one another, all these metrics improving.
So it also, as we said, influences the environment. The heart broadcasts an electromagnetic field around it, which we don't have a lot of time to talk about today, but it's meaningful to our conversation about changing sustainable development goals like SDG 5 and SDG 16 peace. And the energetics of your emotions have such a precise impact on the field your heart is broadcasting that with crude instrumentation called spectral analysis and electromagnetometers, we can identify whether you're angry or frustrated, appreciative or loving, the distinction of those emotions with 75% accuracy. And those feelings are influencing one another, and they're influencing global policy. And it turns out our collective feelings are influencing the world. And this gave birth to the Global Coherence Initiative research that Tammy and Anil inspired us to sneak in at the last minute. So we're just going to show you a couple of quick things about this. Just as every human heart produces an electromagnetic field, so does the earth itself. Do these rhythms you're looking at look suspiciously familiar, like something we showed you right at the beginning? Don't those look like heart rhythms? That's actually the Earth's ionosphere. And it's the Earth's ionosphere being measured by NASA scientist Elizabeth Rauscher in the days before and at and after the trade tower attacks on 9/11. What we might all agree was an ultimate expression of toxic masculinity. What you can see is that even moments prior, and this has to do with the intuitive capacity of the human heart, moments prior to the attack, what was a relatively coherent ionosphere around the earth became incoherent and sustained that incoherence for days afterwards. What this showed the NASA scientists is that collective human emotions are impacting the entire earth itself. You want the upside of this, the good news? We see a similar magnification in the opposite direction on the International Day of Peace annually. Random number generators cease their randomicity as studied by Princeton University in the Global Consciousness Project on the International Day of Peace every year. So there is evidence of a global effect when a large number of people create a similar outgoing emotional wave, whether it's stressful and incoherent, or loving and harmoniously male, female, yin, yang in synchronization, working together in a harmonious marriage as love and peace. This simple change inside on the power of our own breath can indeed change the world. And here's the global peace data. The influence of compassion and love is the strongest impact on the Earth's ionosphere, far greater than violence. And so I want to close by bringing it from the globe, and we'll put in the chat a way that you can reach us and a way that you could sign up for a complimentary consultation with one of our representatives if you'd like to know more about this research or how it might help you personally or your community. But sometimes it's helpful to ground this in a story. So sorry, this is making me unexpectedly emotional. And my mom is here. And she was very worried when this was me at 19 years old, experiencing my first exposure to gender-based violence. I was 19, living in a war zone in Central America. And these photos of me were taken shortly before I was kidnapped at gunpoint. I witnessed all kinds of atrocities while I was there. I didn't know the HeartMath skills, but I was practicing this science with my kidnapper. As I was held at gunpoint, I breathed love to my kidnapper. I did not go into toxic yin and become his victim. I spoke with him all night long and listened with understanding from the coherent right side of the map and invited him to join me there in love. And in the morning, he delivered me to my hospedaje unscathed, without being raped or murdered, and with love. This science and the heart of who we are ends gender-based violence at the personal level, and we can do it together at the global level. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Robert and Sheva, for touching our hearts and bringing forward how we can create peace, not only within ourselves, but on a global level. Thank you so much. And I will say that we're running a bit out of time and we have two incredible speakers left. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring forward Dr. Jenna Darko. And Jenna's going to talk about overcoming the peril and paralysis of the world by empowering the feminine as foundational for innovations and civilizations to evolve more harmoniously with nature. Jenna?
Thank you, Tezakaya, and thank you to everyone who has come before, and Robert and Sheva. You've set up this so well for me to be able to talk about the feminine in terms of energy. And before I do that, I just want to acknowledge, Sheva, your share. And thank you so much for making this deeply personal and something that is like a mind-blowing experience that we can hardly conceive that you endured with such grace, such power, and that you could put it into those words of, I exuded love. It was contagious. That coherent field spread to a person who could have done harm, but who did not. And that it's a real testament to this true power of love, this true power of kindness, this power of staying rooted within oneself and being able to shift then the experience relationally with another. And that is how our world changes. That is how we become more capable of living in peace together. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing that and acknowledge that those kinds of experiences are happening all over our world. When I was a trauma therapist, those were the kind of stories that came and, were spoken sitting from a person sitting across me. And so I became very aware that these are the kinds of experiences of our world. And I love that there wasn't a collapse into victimization that overcame you, which would have been so natural with the nervous system that the human is wired in, to freeze or collapse or attack back or any number of things. But somehow you were resourced with that presence for that natural love within to come forward. And just, it's miraculous that that is our nature and that it has that kind of impact. And so it's with acknowledgement of the great difficulty and honoring of this incredible power of love that weaves its way in both challenge and possible healing in our world that I'm going to speak about today. And before, again, I get kind of into that, I'm just readjusting a little bit, especially as I'm kind of shifting to streamline us a little bit. When we think about this world and we think about this kind of healing that love has the power to do, as we've just left off with, that's a different kind of moving the needle than what we might think of. And there is a good needle in terms of equality, bringing genders into some balance that we can talk about. But this isn't the kind of needle of like the gas needle where we press the gas in the tank and then the needle moves us forward in terms of miles per hour as we're driving ahead. Not the kind of needle of progress and moving forward faster and more boldly with where we've been that can empower women and girl children in our world, that can empower our world to be more in balance. But it is this kind of more healing needle of the acupuncture means, where we start to shift things into a different kind of balance, shift things into a harmony so that the system of this world, the system of our bodies, as we are each a part of this world, as has been spoken, can come into balance, peace, harmony, love, all of these things that our heart yearns for and our heart is completely capable of. And actually, this is the basis of our being. As Anil has said, this is consciousness. It is that which transcends all of these limitations of ourself as separate, transcends the woundedness of the world. And it is our birthright, because this is the ground of our being. Consciousness is our primary place in the world. Peace, love, compassion are the infusions of consciousness. And it is within our heart. All we need to do is take these moments to come home to that. And we feel it. We know it. We can be immovable from that if we keep knowing how to root there. And it's that which ripples forward and creates this flow of inner peace as world peace. So if we're looking to create world peace, it is an inside job first, because we have to come to the primary place of peace, the primary being of peace. And that is within each and every being. It may be covered up by layers of conditions and limitations and beliefs and old things that we've inherited and patterns of how the world operates. But it is that Dr. Martin Luther King and others have spoken, that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. That light is there radiating within us all, no matter what. So it's that way of shifting and illuminating that can happen as that light and that energy begins to flow within our individual body and our collective body of our humanity, within our collective planetary body that is beyond just human form, that we can look to in terms of this kind of empowerment. So thankful that the stage is so beautifully set for this. And I just want to acknowledge that in the General Assembly last September, Secretary General Antonio Guterres spoke of our world being in peril and paralyzed, and called for leaders to basically rally and help bring balm, bring solutions. When we think of those two words, peril and paralysis, just tune into the body. How does that feel? How does peril feel within the body? How does paralysis feel within the body? Maybe you can put it into the chat. I know for me, when I think of peril, I feel fear. I feel nervous at a level of really primal, prickling, tingling, frozen with that paralysis. Beautiful. So if that's the state of our world, we know that that is a falsity. That is a layering over the true nature of our being, because we are not composed primarily as consciousness of fear, peril, paralysis, being frozen. Nature, in the truest sense of our being, is capable of peace, is capable not of paralysis, but of possibility. And so we're coming here together today to explore into, how do we unlock that? How do we step in to this awareness that is our birthright, so that that can ripple forward? And this, again, the stage has been set so beautifully. It is through coming into that stillness so that that transcendent knowing can be possible. And not only transcendent in a way of being beyond the body, which Anil talked about in his direct experience, but then bringing, as he said, bring that back, bring that into the world. That's immanence. So transcendence is only something that's going to bring us a greater ability to live consciously on the world if we can then ground it and emanate it as that partner energy, transcendence and immanence, rippling it forward. But we've got to be able to first find it, come home to it. I say come home because it's already us. It's already completely here. And so when we can feel that ricochet of words like peril and paralysis as a state of our world, we watch the news, we're exposed to messages like this all the time. It hits. We can know that somehow there's some energy that is rippling in a way, like that red line on Sheva and Robert's whiteboard, that is a disruptance from that more smooth, coherent energy that is gratitude, that is ease, that we all yearn to feel. And I think that anyone here, and I would say billions of people in the world, yearn to give that also to others of humankind. And we extend that as humankind to other species as well. So it's this inner peace that we must find. I think there's a myth that it is human nature to be at war. It is true nature to be peace. So we've got to start to flip that script. And those of us who are on this page, the more that we can amass our resources for knowing this and for living it, we can be like that square root of 1%, able to spread it, knowing that that's really all it takes to create these big seismic shifts, like Robert and Sheva have explained with their beautiful research, and like Tammy has brought us into this experience through the harp. So what I'm going to do is just touch very briefly on this feminine masculine. And again, just rely on the fact that this has been so beautifully already brought forward. So I'm going to just pinpoint a couple of anchors here. In the last section, when the Global Coherence Initiative was being talked about, there was a quick slide where there was looking at the electromagnetic field of the Earth. And knowing that we have an electromagnetic field, each of us, in our biofield of the body. And that's what then broadcasts out that signal of whatever we're feeling or thinking that can be detected by instrumentation now. And it is detected by each of us in terms of that subtle sense. You know, somebody walks in the room angry, we feel it. Somebody walks in the room and exudes peace, we feel it. And animals too are often are great sensors for giving us feedback of that kind of feeling energy. So it's that electromagnetic field that is holding that energy and sending it along so that we can receive it and transmit it. And when we think about feminine and masculine, we can think that yin yang. I love that we went to ancient China for this. And we can go to science as well. We can go right to the laboratory of physics and understand that that electromagnetic energy in many ancient traditions has been seen as that electric being a masculine charge and the magnetism being this feminine quality. Electric often represents copper, or is represented as copper or by copper. Copper is an electrical conductor, and it's called sometimes masculine. Zinc, feminine. That creates a battery. It creates an energy current, a device that energy currents can run through. So we can break this down into, you know, this type of energy as yin and yang. And we can also understand that there's kind of this electric component that's got life. It's got ability to drive power. And this magnetic component that is receptive, that hones things in and brings things together. So I'm going to kind of come from that viewpoint and say that as we try to create a world of peace from that place of inner peace, the biggest thing to look at in terms of balances and imbalances and how are we creating this world, I think, is that this electric piece of running forward, taking action, has been part of that toxic masculine, if you will call it that, paradigm that is within all of us. It's an energy of being outgoing, doing something, conducting, having one thing be a current that leads right into the next. If that doing is coming from a place of love and compassion and peace, then the world that we create from that action is filled with love and harmony and peace. And it's a beautiful thing. But when we've been disconnected, when we've lost the connection with our awareness, then that doing can come with all kinds of other distortions and other vibrations. So it is this empowerment of the feminine that I'm calling this, a way of coming into awareness of the magnetic property that we have, that receptive property, that feminine quality of being able to be the open space for something to be conceived and gestate, an idea, an intention, a hope, a wish, a dream. So can we empower that first as we learn to recalibrate some of our energies of how we are creating our ways of the world? Can we sit first in the stillness or this meditation or in the coherence of the heart, and then receive inspiration for action that is aligned with the greater intelligence of the field that we're all constantly putting information into, drawing information out of, so that all is known. So every time there's a need, there's a solution. Every time there is a dream, there's an ability to enliven it. There's an ask, there's an answer, a yearning, a response. That's the nature of the field, because it's constantly flowing like this. So can we become vehicles, instruments like this harp? Can we use ourselves as the most powerful technology on the planet, this mind-body vessel, to innovate new ways to create a culture of peace Absolutely, it's what we're here to do. Every one of us that is on the planet, even those that we see as the most at war, are born in this time for this great change to be able to take a quantum leap. So Tammy and I are going to lead us into a experience so that we can just feel this. And what we're going to note is, what does it feel like to be in disharmony? What does it feel like to be off? What does it feel like to be in harmony? With this intuitive capacity that we all have about how to come home to peace and then interact with the world in a way that ripples forward that truth. Just listening. Disharmony, discord. How does it feel? When we miss each other. Gap in understanding. Miss the mark of our authentic expression. What would we do in this moment? We know how to recalibrate. It's within us, always that intelligence and wisdom. Come back to that inner truth, that transcendent knowing, that harmony. You might fall off and get off center. You might have discordant interactions with one another, as individuals, as communities, as nations. And there's that reharmonizing ability. It is innate within individuals, communities, nations, and our entire planet. I believe we are not here to administer a whole lot of medicine to this world that is in peril and paralysis, but to realize that it is a world that has reached its conception, its being, and is ready, as all things do. They have a wave of birth, life, and death. It's maybe ready to go. What are we willing and able to say, nati, 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 not this, not this, not this, to? Once we have done that within, and we know, oh, not this identity, not this behavior, not this name, not this label, but primary being, can we take that into the world and go, not this war, not this hatred, not this violence? What is true? What is kindness? What is peace? What is love? How do we bring forward an entirely new way of living in this world? Can we let go? Can we be brave enough to let go of the things that are not working in order to recalibrate to our highest humanity and evolve our ways of being together so that we can see in our lifetimes the empowerment of all to thrive according to the unique characteristics and purposes that we all have, which can happen as we just recalibrate towards honoring life. And yes, policy and procedures and those kinds of things absolutely are needed to help support that. But if we come home to ourselves and we see that consciousness in one another as one whole fabric, naturally, the empowerment and lifting of everyone into their own gifts to give the world is the thing that flows. So with that, I just leave us in a state of hope in a situation that has challenges, but that we truly can be the answers to. And I'll join you again at the backside of David's presentation to talk a little bit about how that can be. And I'll say, just from this perspective of empowering that feminine, meaning the magnetic, intuitive capacity that we have. In terms of then action, we can go from the how, from an inspired place, into the doing, to create some structures that can be like that masculine architecture that can then hold and support and protect this work of a more peaceful world rolling forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. It was just perfect. Thank you. And now, last but certainly not least, I'm going to turn the floor over to David Wick, who is going to talk about empowerment through the lens of the yoga of the culture of peace. David?
So I just need to check about timing and how do we proceed? We're past.
I think we're going to just go ahead and proceed. I'm hoping people will stay with us. This is an amazing presentation. So please, the floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you. Well, thank you. And so much has been explained, so much has been expressed, felt, and it's powerful, obviously. Who we are, what we do is amazing. And we do make change. We do make change. So I'm going to go to screen share. Yeah, let me bring this here. And proceed with what we're talking about is the yoga of the culture of peace. Just we won't go any further, but what comes to mind? Yoga of the culture of peace. Just hold that for a moment. What we're doing here, this is the first public step in an extremely important action and journey. This is the first public expression of this. This is bringing two major entities, thoughts together. It's an inquiry. This is not having the answers. This is not having a lot of explanation. This is an inquiry, and this is a long-term inquiry. And you are part of it now, and you are invited on this journey. Again, yoga, we're going to look at what that is, and then also the culture of peace. Actually, start with the culture of peace. That's important to have understanding here. In the UNESCO Constitution, it says, since the very beginning, since the wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that defenses of peace must be constructed. In the minds. I have what Albert Schweitzer has said. The world we have created is a product of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. It's fundamental. And we do it. In 1999, after years of work developing the whole concept of a culture of peace, in 1999, the General Assembly, with a unanimous vote, passed the Declaration and Program of Action on a culture of peace. Pathways to Peace and Avon Madison in particular were part of this in the years prior to this. Others were, Ambassador Chaudhry, David Adams, and others really did deep work on this. And it was a major accomplishment coming to this point. The major resolution, which many people feel this is the crown jewel of the United Nations, the culture of peace. And it is focused on all of the United Nations systems, and it still is evolving, it still is becoming known, it still is becoming understood. It has many parts to it, but there are 8 action areas that are just really critical, that it really identifies. And the 8 action areas are fostering a cult. This is again focused on nations. This is focused on individuals and cities, for that matter. Fostering a culture of peace through education, promoting sustainable economic and social development, promoting respect for all human rights, ensuring equality between women and men, fostering democratic participation, advancing understanding, tolerance, and solidarity, supporting participatory communications and the free flow of information and knowledge, free flow, promoting international peace and security, or any level of peace and security. That is the culture of peace. The culture of peace is not just, we're not just talking about creating peace. We're talking about creating the culture of peace. And you think about what culture is, what that means. It's all things that we do. It's all things that we live. That's our institutions, our celebrations, our organizations, how we function with each other. So that's the culture of peace, which is a big deal within the United Nations, and it is evolving, and we're part of that evolution. The next joining here and coming together is the new focus, and you've heard so much right now how powerful this is around yoga. And many of us have been experiencing yoga in many different ways. So here is, let me see if I can move my little screen here. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root yogu, how do you pronounce that? Meaning to join or to yoke or to unite. As per yogic scriptures, the practice of yoga leads to the union of individual consciousness with that of the universal consciousness, indicating a perfect harmony between the mind and body, man and nature. This is from a Google definition. A more nuanced and focused definition, the term yoga, again, from the Sanskrit root, which means meeting, union, communion, consummation, abstraction, realization, absorption, or metaphysical philosophizing of the highest type, that promises to bring those proximity between the soul and the oversoul. But the yoga system as a system was first expounded by Patanjali, the great thinker and philosopher, in his Yoga Sutras, sometimes before the Christian era. So thousands of years ago, yoga was engaged, was emerging. This is from The Crown of Life by Kirpal Singh, who's the great spiritual teacher and master. Well, what are the different forms of yoga? There are many different forms of yoga. Again, what we're talking about is union and practices, engagement of union. So there's Ashtanga yoga, mantra yoga, hatha yoga is a physical yoga that's so popular, and many people are engaged with that. But then there's Laya yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Surat Shabd yoga, Karma yoga, etc. There's many different practices, and some of them they're not movement, they are meditations, meditation practices, and going within. But it is all about so many of the things that we've already heard from everybody. It's a way of not being engaged in the external. It's how to become engaged in the internal. And it was already shown with Anil and Robert Sheva, that there is evolution. It changes consciousness. Coming within, being more heart-centered, being more inward-centered, changes consciousness. But consciousness is about mindset also. That changes thinking. And changing thinking will change behavior. So we have the different forms of yoga. Another image that is often used, a beautiful image that is wonderful. You go back to ancient China, where the yoga was very important, very strong. Why are we doing this? Why are we bringing yoga and cultural peace together? Because it's to benefit humanity now and in the future. What we're talking about here, yes, we engage with yoga the way we do. We're becoming more aware of what are the things that we can do to evolve our consciousness, to become more conscious, to change the things that we have in the world. We need to move to another level. Einstein just said it. We got to change our thinking. and set it with the UNESCO Constitution. We can't do it in the same way. We have to change our thinking. That's where it becomes. So the inquiry here is, what is the form of yoga, or all yogas, or perhaps there's new yogas to be evolved and developed by us or our future generations that will impact the culture of peace, that will impact while we live and how we function in the world. So it is not in the violence and the way it is now. We do have a choice. Everything is a choice. Think about it. Everything is a choice and agreement. That's it. So one example of taking this information of the culture piece was creating the Ashland Culture Peace Commission here in Ashland. He did it for 5 years, engaging all parts of the city, the police department, the city council, the homeless shelter, the on and on, and seeding what is a culture of peace. And it evolved, it changed the city. Another example, practical example, is Pathways to Peace. Pathways to Peace and the Peace Wheel, that all the different parts of our community, all the different parts of our culture are pathways. They are the pathways to peace. Everyone has a contribution to make, and every person has a contribution to make. Every one of us right now, we make a choice now. We make a choice getting up in the morning. What kind of day are we going to have? How are we going to communicate with people around us? What are we going to contribute to, our own consciousness evolution? So the next step, I want to ask Dr. Darko to come in and talk about this aspect of it.
Thank you, David. So this is just a model. This is an idea in terms of structure that could be put in place through that sense of our unity and through all of our systems being interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. And the idea is to set the stage for that inspired action to come forward and for the natural organization that exists in the world, as has already been spoken, that there already are connections. This is a matter of us discovering those connections that already exist so that we can resonate together, find one another, pair up, interact, have organizations that can collaborate and contribute. So there's a project that we're in the process of formalizing called Project Evolve. And the concept is to nourish the human spirit or human consciousness as the foundation, that foundational being within us, for then taking inspired action to create a more beautiful world. And with the whole idea being that in order to create a world that is at peace, we must be at peace and then have that emanate. And yes, it somewhat goes both ways, where as we create a world that can foster peace for others, then the creation can kind of come through in this trial and error and the resonance and dissonance, like Tammy was able to share with the music of the harp to show us that we can be a work in progress. It doesn't have to be this primary rooted consciousness that then ripples forward. We can be in that, like, walking the walk and refining our way through, finding our stride, finding our notes, finding that orchestration as we come together in order to evolve our ways of being, and then finding those touch points of peace, finding that coherent heart connection. But that having a core of some leadership that at least understands what consciousness is and why it is the true empowerment for consciously creating our world is an important container. And then this is just a visual to help us understand that there are different spheres of processes or ways of interacting that can be held by the culture. And this really just dovetails with the peace wheel that talks about all of the different aspects of our culture. This is kind of like the how-to. Where does this happen on the ground level? It happens on our lands, where we can reverse some of the harmful farming effects and recalibrate our ways of being able to partner with the earth for nutrition, really taking care of nature and ecology by unwinding our old patterns where we've created some really severe crises in those domains. Helping hone our education and abilities to train ourselves. This kind of falls under a category of a whole other topic that I could go into on peace literacy, but with Pathways to Peace and this United Nations initiative, the idea is for us to become more able to educate ourselves in ways of peace, to build the literacy muscle that we could grow on being peaceful. And so education and being able to train in this way could be like an analog, a compatible antidote to the war machine. What if we could build peace academies that were serious as a part of our society as we have poured resources into fighting? You know, just imagine the kind of traction and the kind of change that we could catalyze if we resourced peace to the same degree as we have resourced war. And building that into like a lifestyle and a community-based agreement, you know, like David has said, we have created the world based on our thinking. We've created war based on that being in the minds of men. And if we just shift this to what is much more truthful about the nature of our being, and really calibrate our society's efforts towards peace, you know, we can just create a whole new lifestyle. But we would need to develop some structures for this to be able to really take effect, especially on the scope of pressure that we have in this world that is falling apart and being rebirthed. That kind of structure can really help facilitate a new creation, just like DNA is a structure that facilitates how does this body know how to organize and grow. And then research and development, you know, research has been spoken about beautifully here so we can understand, oh, these are powerful effects. These are situations that can be remedied by these kinds of measures. Change happens. We want to really be able to hone and develop that. But that really all of this comes down to the level of the individual and level of our relationships and our connection to one another in the earth. So having places where we can go to come home within and to connect together. Places like mind, body, spirit centers where yogas can be practiced, where sound and music can be infused to help bring us to the heart. And these heart-based practices and meditation techniques can be honed so that we more and more and more come to our true awareness and then live from that place. And having maybe, you know, like we have these army bases where massive trainings happen, massive operations get mobilized. What if we can, you know, kind of counter that with retreat centers where we can retreat inward and then really, you know, also work, put that inspiration, put that centered place into action and go forward to be able to create ripple effects and create real solutions. One of the biggest things research is really showing us is that if we could tend well to our soil, we can tend well to our body and our body-mind connections, and we can help really start to shift the ecology that is suffering into a healthy ecology. If we take care of our soil, we are taking care of our water. If we're taking care of our soil and our water, we're taking care of our air. So that's the part where we're all interconnected. And if we start to understand that if we mobilize our resources towards this way of cultivating the abundance of the world and sharing it, we might be able to start to break down some of these scarcity patterns that are fueling a lot of the sense of conflict and competition and escalate into things such as nuclear war potential. So this is a very serious model in terms of believing that there can be true impact. And I won't go into kind of some of those little purple corners. If people want to take a screenshot of that, you can, or contact us through Pathways of Peace, and we'll be very happy to share these kinds of models. And we plan to work with our networks that are established so beautifully from decades of this labor that has gone forward. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of that so that we can get these kinds of projects launched to contribute to a culture of peace, to continue to grow the International Cities of Peace initiatives, and really be the change that we are hoping to see in this world.
Great. Thank you very much, Jen. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So, you know, what has already been talked about, the yin yang of life, the yin yang of our being, and as we get greater understanding and balance of ourselves, it creates a greater balance in society and also for women and girls. It's so essential that we have this kind of awareness all the more, because there's been said by many people, is the women of the world who are going to save the world, to really help move us to that level of culture of peace. So let me move this to the last. Thank you very much. Again, this is a journey. This is a beginning. This is an inquiry, the yoga of the culture of peace. If you're interested in knowing next steps, please leave your email address in the chat, and we will communicate with you as we move forward. So welcome aboard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna and David. Yes, we're very excited about this next step at Pathways to Peace, the yoga of the culture of peace. So thank you both. So we are at the end of our time. Thank you all for being here. Oh my goodness. And I think we need to anchor this with a little bit of movement. So if you can, I'd like you to be able to see you. If you're reluctant, that's okay. Just do this with us as a way to close. So we're going to say this together 3 times with each of these, and it has movement. So it begins with the heart. I am a pathway to peace. And you have to say it out loud. And you can unmute so we can hear you. It'll be cacophony, but that's okay. We want to be boisterous at this point, so you can unmute yourselves. I don't want to be the only one saying it, so unmute, please. Good. Okay, ready? Boldly. I am a pathway to peace.
I am a pathway to peace.
I am a pathway to peace.
I am a
I am a pathway
to peace.
Now to each one in this group, look eye to eye. You are a pathway to peace.
You are.
You are
a pathway to
peace.
You are
a
pathway to
peace.
You are
a pathway
to peace.
to peace.
And now encompassing this room and beyond our whole planet, we are pathways.
We are a pathway to peace.
We are pathways.
We are pathways to peace.
We are pathways to
We
peace.
are pathways to
We
peace.
are the pathway to peace.
And peace prevails on earth. And peace
prevails
on earth.
And
Thank
prevails
you
on
all.
earth.
Thank you all. Thank you, Becky, for providing tech. Thank you to all of our amazing presenters. And most of all, thank you to all of you. Yes, Grace. Thank you to all of you for bringing heart into this presentation. You are pathways to peace. Thank you.
Thank you.